From the grind to the glory, one man's journey proves that heart, hustle, and determination change the game. This is Catch as Catch Can with George Tinsley Sr., where adversity is met head-on and champions are made. Here's George.
Welcome to Catch as Catch Can. I'm George Tinsley Sr., former professional athlete, entrepreneur, author, and your host. This is a space where we sit down with leaders who face real challenges, learned real lessons, and kept moving forward.
Turning obstacles into opportunity.
Good afternoon. Today we have Susan Black-Beth with us. Susan is the founder and managing partner of Auspicious Group, aligning private equity objectives with franchise systems health through a people-first approach. As a keynote speaker and host of the Owl's Edge podcast, she is known for candid conversations on leadership, culture, and driving outside performance in the franchise systems. Her style blends practical insight, candor, humor, and heart. Susan, it is a pleasure to have you with us today on our podcast, and let's have some fun and talk about your expertise.
Let's do it.
Susan, take us back to the beginning and how you first got started in school, and whatever you want to tell us about some of the early obstacles that you faced and overcame.
Yeah. Well, my story happens to be one where I literally get to go. So when I was born, because my story goes back that far, George, my parents are the founders of the nation's largest self-serve car wash chain. Wow. Having built over 700 of them over the course of just shy of 49 years in business together. And my mom was 3 months pregnant with me, putting the roof on the very first car wash they ever built.
Wow.
And so that family business, and I know you know family business very well, but that family business is the one I was born into. It was the one I started working in when I was 4 years old. It's the one I bought my first location of with my sister when I was 19.
How about that?
And so that I grew up at an entrepreneurial table, right? My parents are truly an American dream sort of story, right? My mom's older brother was my dad's best friend growing up. So they've known each other since they were 8 years old in a small town in Iowa. And they had moved to Illinois because my dad was a high school teacher. My mom was a radiology secretary at the local hospital. And they had my older sister, Jen, and they were just trying to figure out how to make ends meet. And my mom said, you know what this little town needs? My hometown is about 4,000 people in a cornfield in Western Illinois. And she said, this town needs a self-serve car wash. And from there, they went on to be in business together, like I said, just shy of 49 years, part of construction of about 700 locations, employing thousands, many retirees in the communities that we served. So my origin story truly goes back to the early days. And my parents thought they had a couple of unwritten rules for my sister and I. And that was that we had to go work somewhere else after college before we could come back into the family business. And anybody that was going to serve on their executive leadership team had to have active ownership interest in at least one location. Mm-hmm. And that was so that when we were being of service to our licensees and then our franchisees, that, you know, when somebody called in and an owner said, oh my gosh, Susan, it's been raining for 3 months. What do I do? Like, who do I pay first kind of deal? Because rain in the car wash business obviously is a big impact. That we wouldn't just say, well, it's going to eventually stop raining, but your royalty fees are due on the 15th of the month. Don't forget that, right? We would truly have the understanding of what being an owner and an operator in that system felt like, and the challenges that were faced. And hopefully my franchisees, the franchisees of Superwash, would tell you that it helped us be better support to them along the way. Superwash was actually set up as 50% company owned and operated and 50% franchisee owned and operated. So when I was the chief operating officer, we had about 150 locations in each of those categories. And so I got to run a system and help lead a system that was equal parts company ops and franchisee ops. And so it was just huge learning ground for me. I could go on about this part of the story forever,
Well,
but shall I move to another part of the journey, or shall I stop?
so let me stop you there, because you're developing a great story here, and do want to get to where you are today. But let me go back to that early childhood, that your mom and dad had started a business when your mother was carrying you, and you were born into the business. How did you feel as an early child, coming up, and your parents being involved in the business, and the different thoughts that you may have had? Because I'm sure some of our listeners out there are involved in this kind of situation, and some, as we know, they grow up, they don't want to be a part of the business at all.
Right.
They're second generation, because the parents are working too hard. But tell us what you were experiencing.
Yeah, so the busiest or biggest growth years for Superwash were 1988, 89, and 90. So I was sort of 12, 13, 14, 15 years old during that period of time. So I often jokingly say that I was more concerned with how high I could get my bangs and how tight I could get the roll on my jeans, George, than what was going on in the business at the time. But every conversation was around the business, and so I was around it at the dinner table. We were working in the business after school, and for me, as soon as my parents assured me that they would never get divorced because of an issue in the business, that gave me a sense of peace. I don't know that they even know that, but it gave me a sense of peace that, okay, we can fight our way through kind of any of this stuff. And so for me, I just now, certainly as an adult looking back to, I just look at them in awe. I mean, my dad graduated from college. My mom did not. They had one high school accounting class between the two of them, and went on to build this business that just impacted thousands and thousands of lives. And I think I might have been a little too self-focused in those teenage years to really recognize how cool and accomplished my folks really are.
When my wife and I got into the business, our children were 12, or let's say, I think 10 and 8 years old. And, I would take them to school early in the morning, and then go into the business, get to the business and get started. But they tended to, one wanted to be around me and be in the business, not necessarily work, but wanted to be with me. The other one did not want any parts of it at all. And then you mentioned a key point as far as husband and wife in the business, and how you were assured that they were not going to get a divorce, because there are things that happen that, at the dinner table or at home, that really can upset a child, with some of the conversation. How did that happen to you? How were you assured?
Yeah, it was just a conversation. I'm sure there was a blow up that happened. I mean, it was huge growth years, big expansion. And my sister, I think she was just leaving for college. She's 6 years older than I am. And so I think it was just a conversation. And it was not an assurance that everything was going to be okay, but that the business portion of their life, they would always figure out a way to work around. Right. And so that was just imperative to me. And when I came back to the family business in 2000, we were a licensing business from 1982 till 2002, approximately.
Can you tell our guests, as they listen in, what's the difference between a license and franchising?
Yeah. So a licensing agreement is just much less stringent, if you will. It's an agreement that you might use a common trademark, you might buy some products, but there's no ongoing fee, there's no shared advertising, there's no, full support obligation like there is in franchising. But also from a quality control standpoint, you have much less quality control under a licensing agreement than you do under a franchise agreement. And my dad had been against franchising forever. And he had said, we will never be a franchise because in his mind, from what he had been taught by his folks, franchising and collecting an ongoing fee for providing support was akin to going around with your hand out, helping people, but expecting to get paid for it. And that's not how he was raised. That's not how I was raised, is that you do the right thing and everything will come back around. Right. And so, but once we got to having, 420 units or so, all flying the superwash flag, we were starting to see in the system, right? There were divorces happening amongst our licensees. There were people that had been distracted in their full-time careers, et cetera. And so the quality, we just didn't have the control over it that we needed when we had all of these other licensees counting on us to make sure that every superwash, stood tall, stood proud, was a safe place. And so ultimately we made the decision to franchise. So we converted the system from a licensing model into a franchise model. And that's when I came back to the family business, was to lead that conversion.
Okay. So you go to high school. I'm going to take you back again.
Okay.
You go to high school, and were you actually working after school, or walk us through high school, college, what program you chose in college?
Yeah. Absolutely. So I wasn't quite the athlete that you are, George, but I did enjoy playing sports. So I was a volleyball player, softball player, track and field. But again, there were 82 kids in my graduating high school class. I often joke that there were supposed to be 84, but one guy went to jail and one guy joined the circus. So there were only 82 of us. But still to today, and I'm just about to turn 50 next year, 11 of my closest friends are still girls I went to high school with. And so very tight knit high school. And so I played a lot of sports, but yeah, a lot of times every summer, certainly. I mean, I started traveling, evaluating real estate opportunities for the business when I was 17 or 18 years old. When you and I get to have dinner together someday, you'll notice that I won't sit with my back to the door. And that is because ever since I was 17 years old, I've traveled alone, right? And so I always want to be able to see my way out and who's kind of coming and going. And so, I've worked in every part of the business, literally as an owner, first of all, right? But also in the support side on the franchisor side of the business too. When I was going to college, I really had my eye on Ty Detmer. Does that name mean anything to you?
Yes.
Right? I don't know. 18-year-old girl. I thought Ty was adorable. He was on the cover of Sports Illustrated for being the Heisman Trophy winner at BYU, right? And so I thought BYU would be a great fit for me to go to college. And my dad said, you can go anywhere in the country you want to go, but if you want me to pay for it, it's going to be within an hour of home.
There you go.
George, he got me. So thankfully, there was a wonderful D3 liberal arts college called Augustana College in Rock Island, Illinois. My sister had graduated from there as well. My sister's a collegiate volleyball player, a great volleyball player. And Augustana was 58.5 minutes away from home, George. So we got to work within those parameters. So Dad would pay for it. And I went to Augie and had just a phenomenal experience. I am a gal who is a small business gal. I love to build connections and relationships with people. And that campus and that environment really allowed me to do that. It allowed me to explore lots of different interests and ideas, which was great for a small town kid. And I met my best friend, who is still one of my best friends, my college bestie. Her name is Wendy. And Wendy was from Wyoming. And that gave me just a little more perspective, even in that way, too. She is back as a practicing doctor in Wyoming at this point and continues to expand my horizons in lots of different ways. But I was able to do business and I was able to do communications. And so that was a really powerful combo to kind of to all of my excitement and strengths and things that I love to do. I had no idea what I was going to do with them, George, but I like doing it. And I got to tell you this, I did host a radio show on the college radio station. It broadcast exactly across the street to the college student union type place. And so Wendy's dad used to call me 1 Watt Black, because that Black's my maiden name, and he would call me old 1 Watt. And so it literally had 1 watt of power. But as soon as I graduated from Augustana, my sole goal as a gal from a cornfield was to get to the big city, and that's Chicago for me. And so that's where I had to go as soon as I graduated.
Okay. So did you go direct into the business then, or what did you do after graduation? Tell us about
after graduation, I went to work for a conference production company downtown Chicago. So moved to Evanston, Illinois, which is where Northwestern University is based at first, and started working for this company downtown, whereby I would be given a business topic. And at the time, remember, this is sort of 1999, multi-protocol label switching was a big thing. Bluetooth was just starting to get talked about. Credit derivatives are starting, and weather derivatives were all kind of new and up and coming products. And so I would be given a topic on day one of, let's say, multi-protocol label switching. And I had a 20-day cycle to learn everything I could learn about the topic, cold call all of the experts that had been quoted in magazines and articles, et cetera, cold call them, try to get them to talk to me and help me learn even more, and then build a conference agenda filled with speakers that were not paid, and bring a conference, a 2-day conference, to market in 20 days.
Wow.
And so it helped my research skills tremendously. I was traveling to New York City every 12 days or so, which at 22 years old is pretty awesome, except I had to go on the 11 o'clock p.m. flight, which my dad was not happy about. But I just got to see this whole new world. And then it was about a year in, and I was seeing that this wasn't necessarily the direction that I wanted to be taking my career. And my dad came to me and said, "Hey, Suze, we've decided to franchise the business, and I don't want to do it without you. I want you to come back." And I said, "Dad, I'll come back, but I'm not coming back." And what that meant was I had finally made it to the big city, and I was not moving home to go back to work for the family business. And so I have worked from home since 2000. I have never had a permanent office or chair in 26 years. And I'll tell you why, George. Like, I was dating the guy I've now been married to for almost 24 years, and I was 23 years old. And all I could picture is that Kevin and I were going to break up, and I was going to be back dating guys I went to high school with. And I could not think of a fate that would be worse than that at the time. I'm sorry to the 45 guys that were in my high school class. You're wonderful. You're wonderful humans. It just wasn't what I wanted to do.
Right.
But so I have worked from home way before it was COVID cool to do so. And that was a really pivotal decision for me and my mom and dad and my sister, who were back holding down the headquarters, but also for Kevin and I as we got married and ultimately started our family too.
Great story. So, okay, you're tell us about what you're doing now with the
yes. So the big transition happened in December of 2014. So I had spent 14 years of my professional career at Superwash in the family business. And I had been really struggling for about 3.5 years of kind of, what am I being called to do? What is next? Is this where I'm supposed to be? Is this how I'm supposed to serve and how I'm supposed to lead? But I didn't know what else I was going to do. Right? I didn't know if anybody was going to want me. And quite frankly, that's part of my story that most people maybe are a little surprised by, is that I think they refer to it as imposter syndrome, I think is the phrase. And I was, 35, 36, 37 years old, relatively, I think you would say, accomplished or recognized in the field, right? I had been awarded 2 or 3 different awards by the IFA for leadership and so on and so forth. But in my mind, George, like, I had earned all of those accolades under the safety of the family umbrella. And I had never had to go through, I mean, yes, I had that first job out of college, but I was an entry level, conference producer. So there wasn't like a ladder where I was having to learn and having to edge somebody out for a promotion, et cetera. So in my head, like, was anybody going to want me? Right? Or I was going to take a chance on myself and I was going to fall on my face because people were going to find out that I wasn't as good as they thought I was. And that's been one of the biggest hurdles certainly in my career, but definitely in my life too, right? Is just, am I good enough to go do this thing? Can I sit at this table, right? Can I contribute? Am I leading and serving in a productive way for people? And so, ultimately, a friend of mine that I had met through the International Franchise Association Board of Directors told me that he was going to be starting a private equity fund. And again, this would have been 2014. So before the big influx of private equity into the franchise space, he said I was going to be establishing this fund to invest in franchise businesses. And he offered me an opportunity to join him in launching the fund and building it. And after kind of 3 years of, do I stay? Do I go? What do I do? Literally everything clicked into place in a matter of days. And I knew that that was the opportunity to take a chance on. One of probably the most difficult conversation of my life was telling my family that I thought I was going to be leaving the family business.
No, interesting. How did that go? How did that conversation?
I still, people ask me still, like, any regrets. And I try not to live my life with regrets. There's not much you can do about them. So they just kind of drag you down. So I have no regrets. The thing I wish I could change is I wish there was a way that we could have had that conversation and that experience without it hurting everyone so much, right? But when it's your kids, when it's a business you're passionate about, we're used to being, on the phone together multiple times a day. It was a very difficult separation, and a lot of tears, but ultimately was, I think, the right move for the business and for my family and for me too. My growth over the course of the next 10 years of my life and my career, from sort of 2015 to certainly 2025, but even now, it has been exponential in my mind. I had to teach myself the language of private equity. I do not have an MBA. That is a very big chip I have carried on my shoulder for a long time. And I really had to work through that, but I had to teach myself the language of private equity, and I had to teach myself the language of restaurants because that was what we predominantly were going to invest in. And so I had to do that very quickly while I was trying to help establish and lead a fund and build a team and get everybody on the same page. And I was doing it remotely. So there were definitely a lot of balls in the air, but I tend to be a gal who, it's a default mode for me to make sense out of chaos. Like that is something that I just often find myself doing, and it feels very natural to me. There's no greater honor for me than calls me and says, "Hey, Suze, I didn't know who else to call. Can you talk this through with me?" Right? And that people respect my opinion and my logic and kind of my emotion that senses it as well, or supports it as well. And so the growth has been tremendous. We ultimately made 6 investments in 3 countries over the course of about 6 years. 5 of them were in the restaurant business, restaurant side of franchising. I think that what I heard during the multiple times I've listened to various podcasts you've done, right? This is about obstacles into opportunities.
Correct.
And I'll tell you, COVID was definitely an obstacle for everyone, of course. But my portfolio at the time was 4 restaurant companies and a trampoline park.
Wow. Interesting.
So 30,000 square feet of kids coughing on each other, right, was one of them. And 2 of the 4 restaurant brands happened to have self-service salad bars in them. And so their greatest differentiating proposition literally overnight became their greatest liability.
Right.
And so just managing through that with 2 small kids at home was definitely an interesting experience. Unfortunately, one of those restaurant companies did not make it through COVID, and we had to file it for bankruptcy on October 7th of 2020. And, I still often default to thinking like an operator. And, bankruptcy means the operator failed to execute on the mission. Right. And so I took that very, very hard, especially after everyone had worked so hard on that business for a long time. I'm so proud of everyone's efforts. And then we just got hit with something that none of us could ever see coming. And I thought that was going to be the worst thing that happened to me in 2020, George. But alas, it was not. So, are you ready for the big pivot story of my life?
I'm ready.
All right.
We're ready.
On November 20th of 2020, my youngest son, who is now 17 and heading off to college in the fall, had a massive heart attack, completely out of the blue at 12 years old. And we did not know until 36 hours later that what had happened is that he had had a massive widowmaker heart attack. And that we didn't know that until he was in emergency open heart surgery. And so my life pivoted literally on a dime to the two things I did in priority order was, one, bring my son home alive. Like, that is priority number one. And priority two was the bankruptcy, because I had been retained as one of the 5 board members to take that company through bankruptcy. And my team was amazing. My family was amazing. And the franchise community surrounded me in so much just love that I still feel a huge debt of gratitude to many of them, because that journey ended up being almost a year long. Ultimately, my son, while the heart attack did not kill him, did not shut down his other organs, it did destroy the entire bottom left portion of his heart. And so ultimately, he had to have a heart transplant. And that was in April of 2021. There's much more to this story, because it is I truly believe that part of the reason his story happened to him is because I'm supposed to tell it. I don't know how that's going to look yet, but there's literally 7 medical miracle intersection points where the medical answer is he shouldn't be here anymore,
Right.
And yet he is. And so he and I are bonded in a very different way as you go through those experiences with your children. And ultimately, in July of 2021, I was having a conversation with my partner at the private equity group, and he said, "Suze, how you doing?" And I said, "Do you want the real answer or do you want the company line?" And we had been friends for many years before we worked together. And he said, "Susan." And I said, "Aziz, I am literally holding the wheels on my life with baling twine and duct tape, and I think I need to step away."
Yeah.
And so that's when I stepped out of my equity investing job. And I founded my 3rd or 4th company, right? So I had been a franchisee at 19. In 2010, I launched my professional speaking career at the encouragement of Fred DeLuca, the founder of Subway. In 2013, I built a conference called Franchise Capital Exchange. And so this was the next version. There was a gap in the market from an advisory standpoint that I wanted to fill, because I had this kind of crazy set of experiences and skill and connections, et cetera. But I was only going to work with people who truly knew my entire story, because we were just trying to get Brandon back to living at that point, right? And so I needed everybody to know, like, cards face up, if anything happens to him, like, I am gone, right? I am back with him.
Right.
And so I did some really cool deals that during that time, made some awesome connections and did some executive coaching. And my first executive coaching client happened to be the managing partner of a private credit fund. And ultimately, I advised that fund for a year. They invited me to come in-house as their chief operating officer. So I did that for the next 2 years. And then I wrapped up that assignment in sort of July, August of 2024. And then I got to take a year-long radical sabbatical, George, a radical sabbatical, and I highly recommend it. That's a whole nother podcast episode. But during that radical sabbatical, my thought was, again, I just turned 49. My thought was, if this next chapter is my last chapter, and none of us know if it will be or it won't be, but if it is, what do I want that legacy to look like? How do I use this crazy 30-year journey that really I haven't found anybody else in the world that has sat in every one of these seats, right? Franchisor, franchisee, supplier. Yes, lots of people have done that. Add in the equity investor piece. Some people have done that. Add in the board director piece. Your number gets fewer and fewer. Add in being the CEO whisperer, add in, the debt side of things, add in all of the other things that I've had the opportunity to do and see. And there's really nobody else that has this perspective. And so my view was, if this next chapter is my last chapter, I want to use that 30 years to protect and steward forward an industry that has given me some of the very, very best people in my life, so that we can evolve into the future and have an incredibly strong business model for everybody who's involved for many, many decades into the future. And so hence was born Auspicious Owl Group.
Wow, quite a story, quite a story. And one of the key things that you mentioned was that COVID period, where a lot of business models were turned upside down. A lot of businesses went out of business, and it was just a tough period. Somewhat similar to your story, Susan. That's when because we had a buffet business in our KFC, our largest KFC, and we had to shut that down. And of course, the corporation had a number of different desires of what they wanted companies to do. So we actually sold our business at that time to a private equity company.
Okay.
And so that was my first experience with private equity. But I also, from a personal standpoint, lost my daughter during that time. She had a Parkinson's disease, and that, of course, the hospitalization and everything brought about a lot of limitations. So that was a very, very, very tough time for all of us.
I'm so sorry. Yes.
Yeah, but we move on, right? We move on, and so now franchise meets private equity. Tell us about that. That's
Yeah.
I've been on the franchising side. I've sold to private equity. Several of the franchise brands that I own have actually been bought out. Yep. Or majority of their restaurants are private equity firms.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, there was a real influx of private investor capital, but so we use private equity as sort of an overarching term. But when I think about it, private equity is large institutional capital, right? So they raise their funds that then they invest from endowments and foundations and insurance companies. And so these guys come in with very large checkbooks. There are all sorts of outside capital investors, from angel all the way, through the largest of the PE investors in the world. And so we'll use PE just as an overarching term, meaning investor. But for private equity, they love the franchise business model because when we fill out our models, when we look at an investment, we have to focus to what can this investment do for us potentially in 3, 5, 7 years of a hold period. It's much easier to fill in those blanks when you have contracts with your franchisees, and you can spec out exactly what your royalty fees look like if you stay where you're at, if you contract, or if you grow, right? And so that ongoing royalty is very appealing from a private equity investor standpoint. There's several other things that folks get excited about from a growth standpoint, from an investment standpoint, meaning you're using somebody else's, the franchisee's capital to expand your business and to grow. But there's lots of appeal. And so you're right. There was a lot of private equity that flowed into the restaurant space in sort of 2017, 18, 19 into COVID. There was obviously that little pause. And now we've seen quite the shift to more of the services side of the franchise world, meaning home services, meaning commercial services of any sort, personal care, fitness, etc. And so moving towards that non-restaurant side of the world. And because you've done this transaction before, the operators on the franchise side, both franchisors and franchisees, are speaking very different languages than the private equity investors are. And so what I really consider myself to be is, for lack of a sexier term, it's a translator. Right. And the auspicious part of Auspicious Owl is that there is good fortune here for all of us. There is good fortune here for all of us if we care enough to pick our head up and look around. Right. The owl, 270 degrees side to side, a very broad perspective. Owls are known for being able to hunt prey that other hunters don't see. Right. And I picture myself that I see things that other people don't see, simply because I've had my tail handed to me many times over the last 30 years, right? I've had many, many stumbles along the way, situations I wish I would have handled differently or better if I had a different skill set or had more time or just was a more mature leader. And so now I just have this perspective that says, okay, if we can open our eyes wide open, right, and go into these transactions, understanding the objectives of the other side, we can all have far superior outcomes. But people really are the point. And I'll tell you, that's one of the things I've very much heard time and time again through the first 11 or 12 episodes of The Owl's Edge, is just that it's all about the people in franchising, right? It's the franchisees and the risk that they have taken. In many cases, they've leveraged every single thing they have to take a chance on themselves, right? They are playing with, their own dollars, their mortgage on their house, their 401k, whereas the investors may be investing $100 million, but it's of other people's money.
Right.
And that risk tolerance feels very, very different. Right. And so having a translator in the middle who can provide a much broader perspective, which in my mind, perspective is a very powerful multiplier, then hopefully we can have as many really good outcomes as possible, because we definitely want private equity here. You're a wonderful example. I did not know that you had sold to an outside investor, right? We do not want to limit those opportunities. You worked your butt off. Like, my parents worked their butt off. And ultimately, my dad is now 77 years old. My mom is 75. And it was time to exit. They had an awesome run. Everybody's tired. It's time to go to the next group. And my parents sold to a family office in sort of late August, early September of 2025. Right. And so we want those options and opportunities here for people. We just need to make sure that everybody understands the rules of the game.
So, Susan, as a franchisee, we have franchisees out there tuning in.
Yeah,
they want to look at the private equity connection. How would they get in touch? What would first of all, how would they get in touch? What would your advice be? I think we have your social media. We want to pop up also, so everyone would be able to see it.
Yeah. So LinkedIn is always a great place to find me. My email is pretty straightforward. It's just susan@auspiciousowlgroup.com. But there are some pretty substantial barriers to entry for people to sell to true private equity. And that is, you'll hear this number almost all the time, which is $3 million of EBITDA. You have to have $3 million of EBITDA before you can, a private equity group can really talk with you or entertain buying you. And people are like, what's this magic $3 million number? It is simply a function of numbers, right? If they raised $1 billion fund, and in theory, they are going to have those dollars for 10 years from their limited partners, their investors, you got 5 years to invest it and 5 years to harvest. These are very obviously broad strokes of how funds work. But you can't write $10 million checks and get to investing $1 billion. You have to write bigger checks. And so it just becomes a function of the numbers. What we're seeing now, though, is this kind it's in vogue right now, and that's this platform play, right? Where at the franchisor level, private equity are buying smaller companies and putting them under one umbrella together. That's at the ZOR level. At the Z level, there are very specific private equity groups who want to invest in franchisees. Some of them want to buy a majority, and they're buying out folks who would like to take all of their equity out of the business. There's others who are backing operators, and they want you to leave in 20 or 30%, right? Well, you go grow this business together. And so it's all about kind of timing and the market and what line of business are you in? Because again, right now, the appetite is heavier on the consumer side than it is on the restaurant side, or I should say the services side versus the restaurant side.
Right.
And so it's all about market timing, and it's all about, what do you want on the other side? And this is the conversation I had with my dad when they started looking at selling the family business is, okay, what are we solving for? Are we solving for absolutely maximizing the amount of dollars that can come from this sale? Are we solving for keeping 30 jobs in a small town in Illinois? Are we solving for X, Y, or Z? Because depending on what you're solving for, there will be different buyers who are the right fit. And what you should do with the company may have more value depending on how you sell it. The franchisee side, as you know, gets a little trickier because you have that franchise agreement, and franchisors have typical approval rights in many cases. And so just having a conversation and understanding what's out there, what's available to you, is a great place to start. I gave a talk at the multi-unit franchise conference that happened at the end of March in Las Vegas. By the way, to any franchisees who might be listening right now, please look at going to that event in 2027. It'll be in late April. They did a wonderful job with it. But I spoke there with two of my private equity colleagues, and it was all about your options. Like, you're ready to sell as a franchisee. What do my options look like? So if you would happen to like a copy of those slides from that presentation, please email me. Let me know that you heard me here on George's show, and I'll email those slides over to you just as a reference.
So, Susan, you mentioned the $3 million EBITDA. How would a franchisee know, other than the EBITDA, and their franchisor relationship, or the guidelines, a contract, etc.? How would they know that they would fit into that particular model to be able to come to you and talk to you about that?
Yeah, it's all just conversation, right?
Okay.
And there are advisors out there. I do more advisory work than anything. I'm sort of a coach of sorts, if you will, to help people understand the landscape and just like, wow, what does this even mean, right? And that translator role. But there are investment bankers out there. And right now, I will say there are a lot of investment bankers who think they know what they're doing in franchising, and they don't. They just haven't done enough transactions here to understand what the landscape really looks like. On the other hand, there are some phenomenal investment bankers that are doing great work and should be highly trusted to do these transactions. And so getting in touch with them is the next kind of layer, because their job is to have a full picture of the landscape. Who are the players below $3 million of EBITDA? Because there absolutely are investors who $3 million in EBITDA is not their threshold. That's a traditional private equity threshold, right? And there's different kinds of buyers out there, and those investment bankers can help you understand that landscape. I think I saw a question pop up that said, what makes you appealing to outside capital? Right. And as a franchisee, some of what becomes really attractive to an outside investor is, what does your development territory look like? Right. How much room do we have to grow? Are there like, are there territories still available, right? There are definitely some of the more mature restaurant brands that you've been very close to that are completely out of territory, right? Like you gotta seriously know a guy to get into those territories. So how much room do you have to grow and expand? Are there other operators that you might be able to acquire to continue to grow your business? Where might we be able to upgrade the team if that's a case, right? A lot of us start as generalists. But as you grow a business, you trade out your generalists for your specialists, right? You move from having your general practitioners, if you will, to your brain surgeons and your heart surgeons, like people that go out and do rifle shot work at a task. And so are there upgrades in the team that could be made? Are there expenses that just aren't being optimized, right? So are there buying efficiencies within your system that you might be able to grab, so on and so forth. And so that's really what a great investor partner is there to do. They're there to think about that strategy of the business with you, right? While you've got your operator team there clicking away.
What if you were a franchisee or in an existing business and you're looking to get into another business and you're not there yet, but you have the experience? How would that work with that particular franchise? That's one question. The second question is in the airports, concessions business, which are more licensee type deals that are for anywhere from 8 to 10 or year contracts. Are there investors out there that would look to partner to get into those kinds of deals? Those are two of the questions that popped up.
Yeah. So was your first question around, like, if I'm a franchisee of one brand and I want to look to join another brand, or is it I'm a franchisee of one brand, but I need a capital partner to expand into another brand?
To either expand in another brand or expand in another or in the same brand, but multiple locations. Say it's a market that has 8 stores and they're up for sale. They want to.
Yeah, there definitely are private equity or investor partners out there that are looking at those types of deals. It really is about when I was doing deals every day, we would often say, am I backing the jockey or am I backing the horse, right? So am I backing the operator team or am I backing the concept? In an ideal scenario, you're backing both, right? But there are times where you could upgrade a management team or you could find a better fit, et cetera. And so being able to show a prospective investor, like, hey, here's the runway, here's what we would do exactly, right? Here's the plan. We just need the capital to fuel it, right? There are investors out there, but they have to be able to see the upside. That is for sure. One thing when I started the Franchise Capital Exchange conference that I answered this question 100 times if I answered it once, which is, wait a minute, if I'm selling to private equity, you mean I'm giving up a percentage of my company, right? And the way that I talk about that is, no, you are not giving up a percentage of your company as an owner when you take outside capital. You have made a strategic decision that selling a portion of the equity of your business and bringing on a partner will allow you to do something bigger, faster, stronger than you could do it on your own. Right? Okay. Or there's an entire exit plan in mind, some sort of transition, generational shift, et cetera. And so those are the things for folks to keep in mind. This is a very, very serious transaction. There's a lot of legal involved. There's a lot of accounting involved. There's tax implications, but there's life implications, for how long you've been involved in the business. For my folks, they knew like they were either going to own 100% of it or none of it, because it had just been the two of them as partners for almost 50 years. And so that changes the buyer you can go to. As far as the airport concession side, I'm not as familiar with that line of business.
Okay. It's a different business model because the equity position is is you don't own anything. It's spirit of cash flow basically is it's what happens there, and the contracts are a lot shorter. But it's a good business. We're heavily involved in the airports in Tampa and Miami ourselves, and Louisville, Kentucky.
I just flew home out of Tampa a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, which airlines did you fly?
I was on United.
United. Okay. So yeah, we're PF Chang's is when you go
walk
through the main
in.
terminal there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what else would you like to tell our listeners here as we get somewhat close to the ending of our program? But this is such an exciting informational podcast that I want to make sure that everyone gets their questions asked. So any of you out there that has a question that you want to Susan to ask, or if you want her to come to speak at one of your meetings, or anyone out there, just shoot your questions in so she can answer them here.
Well, thank you so much. And yeah, definitely once my son is off to college in the fall, I am ready to be back out on the road, and I'm ready to, be speaking to bigger crowds and audiences. And I always try and bring a balance of education and inspiration, and humor and heart, hopefully, along the way. But one of the things that I would encourage everybody to think about is to think about franchising as a living organism, right? So for years, I described the ideal franchisee-franchisor relationship as the franchisor is the brain of the body, right? Not because we're smarter by any means, but because we like the box, we write the structure, right? We are the originator of that support and those systems. Like, that's what we do. And the franchisee is the heart of the business, right? They're the ones that bring life to the whole local entity, whether that's in the airports where you're operating concessions, or it's where you're out in your local market and you're meeting and greeting your customers and giving them a different flavor, if you will, than what they would get in a different environment. And so now I have expanded that to help us understand all of the players. It used to be that there was a three-legged stool. And I'm sure you heard this. You may have talked about this with the Colonel back in the day, George, but there's a three-legged stool. It was the franchisors, the franchisees, and the suppliers. That's who made up the ecosystem. And in my mind, that's not the case anymore, right? There's been almost $100 billion of institutional capital invested into the franchise space, across about 200 plus organizations. That is entirely too many dollars, right, for us to not say that private equity is at the table with us, right? So franchisors, franchisees, suppliers, institutional capital investors. So now franchisors are the brain, franchisees are the heart, and we cannot lose sight of them and their profitability. The connective tissue of the body that holds us all together are our vendor partners, right? Or our supplier friends that help keep everything moving. And then the private equity investors or the outside capital, they're sort of the endocrine system. They're the hormones, right? If you get the right balance of hormones, George, right, it can amp up growth. It can drive you forward. If your hormones get out of balance, all sorts of things go wonky in the system, right? Yeah. And then we certainly have our customers, and we have our team members that are out in these local units. And so as you think about it, right, all of us kind of go through our day very naturally with our blinders on. We think about us and our perspective, how we're incentivized. But if you just take a minute and think about the whole person, right, the whole body, all of a sudden you start to say, oh, I'm answering the wrong question. Right. I'm not getting to the root cause of this sickness, or I'm not understanding how to optimize this whole person. Right?
Yeah. You know, when I can't help but thinking back that when I first got into the KFC business as a trainer, working with the Colonel and training the franchisees who were coming in, and looking at it from the standpoint that you got the corporation, you got the corporate restaurants, you got the franchisees who believed in the Colonel thoroughly. If he said boo, they all, jumped, and he had the franchise side of the business, and our customer base was really more directed or pulled more towards the franchisee side, because the franchisees were putting their sweat and blood into the business, were there, could talk to the guests and so forth. The corporate restaurants, it was just a corporate setting, and you got a corporate employee that doesn't really care, if you will, if they're not really motivated and so forth. And that was just natural motivation, as you and your family did when you started your business. So the model that you're talking about now, from the franchise equity and being the brain and the other side, the franchise side, it all still makes a lot of sense, and I've always been more franchisee side and more than corporate, because I've actually seen through experience what it will actually do to you and your relationship with the community that you do business in, so forth. But I tell you, Susan, this has been a great conversation. I haven't asked very many questions, because it just oozes out of you, and you feel it. I got to admit, I have missed those conferences, the IFA conferences out. I've been on the agenda a couple of times, but April has always been a tough month for me, through anniversaries or birthdays and so forth, that kept me from coming. But I'm going to get there one of these days to present and be a part of as well, because it's just a great community. So
such a wonderful community, that's for sure. And actually, for next year, so I mentioned I'm turning 50 next year, and I just announced the first official charity of Auspicious Owl Group is a charity here in my hometown called Watts of Love. And Watts of Love delivers solar lights around the world to the most impoverished communities. And so I am taking a group, several of whom are my franchise friends, to Africa. We're going to Malawi to go deliver lights. And it is essentially done like a franchise model, is the way that they distribute these lights in Africa. And it's women supporting women, empowering entrepreneurship through light and hope. And so just that community of people, you literally cannot find this in any other industry, right? These are the people I choose to vacation and spend my birthday with and have a lot of fun with. And the most serious, advisors and counselors that I have came from this industry. We have to make sure that we're picking our head up and protecting the people that power this model.
Susan, it has been great. Just wonderful having you on our program. I wish I had lots more time to talk to you. I'm sure there's a lot of people that we know each, such as Terrian and Barnes and others out there in this industry that just, really eat this stuff up. But thank you. You have been a great guest. Hopefully our audience has been able to learn about what you do and about the different sides of the business, and they're able to reach out to you through the social media. Yes. And we certainly look forward to other podcasts down the road, and wish you all the best, you and your family, and continued success. So thank you.
Thank you so much to you and your team.
Thank you.
This has been Catch as Catch Can. The game isn't over. Your success story is just getting started. Head to tinsley.speaks.com for exclusive content, resources, and opportunities. Catch as Catch Can with George Tinsley Sr., a production of Live Stream Editors.